everybody. Hey, listen, spring break, it looks like it might rain out there, and 8:30. Y'all are my people. You're my heroes. So glad y'all are here today. Hey, and I know, like, if you're a regular, you're like, where's my third song? Well, it's coming at the end, okay? So you're going to get 3 and 4 back to back at the end. So don't try to sneak out of here, okay? Hey, before we jump into the teaching today, I want to just talk about Easter just for a couple more minutes. And if you were here last week, it's a little bit of a repeat, so just figure out what your step is. But if you haven't heard this yet, let me just kind of give you a little bit about Easter. I mean, that we're only 3 weekends away from Easter. And the easiest way for you to get all the info is to hold your phone up to that little device on the back of the chair. If you just engage your phone, it's going to take you to our site, which is all about Easter. When you get there, it's going to look like this, okay? And if yours doesn't look like that, something went wrong, okay? So it's all things Easter. And I just want to point out a couple of the things, okay? When you scroll down, you're going to find Good Friday. So we're going to try something different this year. Matt and I are going to try to, and originally the idea was, what if we covered our whole county in prayer, like literally circled it? That's how the idea started. And then I was like, that's too much to coordinate and pull off right now. What if we just travel around to different places and do a quick Good Friday service? So the important thing to pay attention to the Good Friday is not necessarily duration, because I can't guarantee how long it's going to be, but start time. Okay, so you just look for the start time. Woodbine Coffee Shop, downtown Kingsland. We're going to do one on base. Not all of you get to come to that one, so don't try. And downtown Waterfront, St. Mary's. All right, so that's Good Friday. The service now. So some people were confused about this, and I got to tell you, it didn't translate very well for me either. But on your phone, in order to find service times for Easter, when you're on the Good Friday part, you got to go to the right, okay? So some of you were like, where are the service times for Easter? Because you couldn't find them, and that was me too. You just got to go to the right. So you'll see coming there on Saturday service, the 4 services on Sunday, and there's a little tab there that says, get your tickets. Now, I tried to explain this last week. There's some confusion already. Let me say it one more time. Tickets don't cost anything. You don't have to have a ticket to actually get in the door. We're going to let you come no matter what time you come for one of those services, but the ticketing process just lets us know who's planning on coming at one time so that we can try to space it out as best possible, okay? So if you're like, hey, I know that my family of 4 is coming and my mom and dad are going to be here as well, then just hit 6 for whatever your service is, all right? And so that'll just be helpful. And then you'll see the 24 hours of prayer, okay? Just sign up for 1 hour. You're not praying for all 24, just for 1. That's it. And you do that here. And when you show up here at the building for your time slot, you'll be given the instructions on what to do during your hour. So the one final thing let me direct you towards is the next one down that says serve. So I really want to encourage you to jump in and serve. And if you're like, oh man, I don't want to get stuck here forever, could you just try it one time on Easter? That's it. Can you just say, hey, I'll stand in the parking lot. If I can have a foam finger, then sign me up. Or you want to greet at the front door, you want to carry coffee, you want to rock a baby. You might have to do some background check on you for that, but you know, there's a place for you to serve on Easter, and it's literally going to take hundreds of us to execute it. So let me just encourage you, hit the serve thing, just start the process, and then we'll all kind of come together and make Easter amazing. So, and I think there's a give tab under there. So giving is really what makes it all possible around here. And as I've said many, many times, I think all of us should just do something. And it just gives you a little bit of skin in the game to go, okay, I'm a part of what's really happening around here. Because we're on an incredible mission right now, and God's doing some really amazing things. So that's Easter. We'll give you more and more information as we get closer. Look for some videos, all that fun stuff. All right, here we go. Today we're going to come to the end of a journey we've been on the last 10 weeks. And at the end, we're going to take communion together, okay? And some weeks in here, we feature communion, and we give it more time and attention, and some weeks we just kind of talk about it as a next step at the end of the service. Some weeks, there's been times where we haven't even mentioned it, and you just know that it's available, and you take it as you feel led. But we're going to do a little bit differently today than we normally do. It's going to require you to get up and move somewhere, so just kind of go ahead and start stretching for that. Some of you, you know, maybe in your tradition you called it the Eucharist. Maybe you've referred to it as the Lord's Supper. Sometimes we just call it communion around here. So I'm going to explain it, and then we're gonna do it. And I want to just say here that it's open to anyone. Okay, our communion is open to absolutely anyone, regardless of what your your past is, or what your background was, or how you grew up, or maybe what you heard, with this one stipulation. It's open to anyone who is a follower of Jesus, okay? So you're part of this kingdom that we've been talking about, okay? So those are the stipulations. All right, I want to go back to where we began, and we've been working with this sentence, okay, to summarize the kingdom. And it just simply says this. You've heard it before if you've been here, that the kingdom is anywhere that God the King rules and reigns. Okay, that's in heaven and on earth and in the human heart. It's here now, available to anyone, and yet it's still to come when the resurrected Jesus returns and makes it complete. In the meantime, Jesus has left a church to keep building this kingdom. So, in summary, it's God's people in God's place, living under God's rule and God's blessing. Now, have you found that sentence to be helpful in any way whatsoever? Okay, I have. So, all right, great, thank you. I'll be honest with you though, that when I wrote that on the very first week, thinking, man, I got to wrap my head around this somehow, on how do I really summarize what I think is true about the kingdom. And I'll be honest, when I wrote that, I wasn't even entirely sure all of the places and things that we were going to go to and discover, but I think it's actually worked together so perfectly to give us what I hope would be a bigger and a more complete view of the King and the kingdom. And that kingdom, just for our review real quickly, it came with Jesus, who said, okay, the kingdom is here right now. It's standing in front of you, like I'm bringing it with me. And we took a look then at what happens when you choose a bad king, right? Bad things happen, and we set it alongside of what kind of king is Jesus, and Jesus is the kind of king who just simply sets people free. And we spent a whole week talking about who gets to be a part of it, or who gets to be invited into it, and that anyone can be part of the kingdom if we would just see our need. And then we would actually submit our, what I've been calling our little K kingdom, to the leadership of his capital K kingdom. We looked at how we live in this kingdom. It's not externally focused or motivated by the things that we do, but we actually live in it from the heart. And then the words of the king are active as the truth just works into our life, and then it produces these amazing things. We talked about praying in the kingdom, and it's a very, very pointed kind of a prayer that God, would your kingdom actually come here, and the change that the church that he left behind, we spent a week on, is an extension of the kingdom as we work to see that done here on earth. Last week we talked about, and I did an entirely different kind of a message, and some of you are like, boy, I need to listen to that one again. Last week we talked about the kingdom being complete when the king returns. That brings you up to speed, and we're going to finish it today. And each week we've been, and I kind of set these out from the very beginning to say, listen, I really want to point ourselves to 3 very specific next steps, and every week just, take one of these, and they are to enter the kingdom. That's the first step, right? It's an open invitation to anyone who will realize, you know what, I don't think my way is working. It's not producing the things that I want it to produce, and my kingdom is actually much too small of a thing to actually live for, and yet the king doesn't force his way into anyone's life, okay? We deliberately choose to enter it. And then a second step would be, okay, well, I'm going to align my kingdom with his. You say, well, what do you mean? Well, it's a lifetime of work to actually bring all of my decisions and my choices and my attitudes and all of the different ways of living, bring that into alignment with his kingdom. And then we have this commitment in the end, okay, I'm going to bring his kingdom here. Okay, I will be a part of the solution to bring all of the goodness and the greatness and the rightness of the kingdom of heaven into my kingdom here on earth. And as I allow it to invade my life, then my life invades the world. Okay, today I want to wrap up by talking about, for lack of better terms, the final kingdom, and just this amazing reminder of why he's the king. And I want to take you to the book of Matthew chapter 26, okay? So Matthew's the first biographer on the life of Jesus. And Matthew 26, we're going to drop in on what we commonly refer to as the Last Supper. And you go, well, I wonder how it got that name. Okay, well, because it's the Last Supper that Jesus is going to have with his disciples, okay? So let me set the context. This is Thursday, okay, before his arrest and crucifixion. Let's roll it backwards. Sunday is going to be resurrection. Saturday he's in the tomb. Friday he's actually hanging on the cross. So this is Thursday. Judas is going to make his plans to actually betray him. Peter will deny him. Jesus will be sentenced to execution. And so these are the last moments of his freedom, okay? The last day before he goes to the cross. And Jesus chose to have dinner with friends. That's what he chose to do. And he asks some of them, hey, why don't you guys go find a place for us to do this dinner, get everything ready. Matthew 26:19, so the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. And we got to stop right there and just give you a quick summary of Passover. Go all the way back to the beginning of the scriptures almost, and Abraham, right? And God goes, okay, you're the guy I'm going to build this special nation from. Abraham had a grandson by the name of Jacob, who then had 12 sons. One of them was Joseph. Are we familiar with Joseph, Old Testament Joseph? Okay, coat of many colors. His brothers didn't like him that much, so they sold him as a slave to the Egyptians. And then God actually raised him up to this very, very powerful position in Egypt, and he brought freedom to his own family, right? These Hebrews who then came to live in Egypt. For some 400 years after that, the people lived in Egypt, and they were subject to a series of pharaohs or rulers who were very abusive and harsh and mistreated them and forced them into slave labor. And he didn't want them, okay, culminated with the worst of the pharaohs, who didn't want them to worship God. He wanted them to worship him as God. So the real God raises up a leader by the name of Moses. We know Moses, right? Who confronts Pharaoh with some really, really challenging messages on behalf of God. And finally, God reaches his limit with this guy, okay? And after one last opportunity, he sends the 10 plagues, right? 10 final warning signs. And the last plague, the final plague, is the plague of death. You can read all this in the book of Exodus. And the plague of death is where the firstborn son of every family in Egypt would actually die in the night. And the only way to actually avoid that from happening was for people to take a perfect lamb, no spots, no blemishes, no physical ailments, to take that perfect lamb, sacrifice the innocent animal, take some of the blood, and literally paint it on the entryway to your home. And if you've ever heard the phrase before, it would totally give new meaning to this idea where someone might say, or you might read it or hear it, to be covered by the blood, okay? Like that's what happened as God came to Egypt on that night. The firstborn son died to everyone who did not have the blood of the lamb on their home, okay? But for those who did, okay, you did actually have the blood, then God would, this is where we get the word pass over them. Okay, some of you, oh, I didn't know that. That's where that came from. Now, the result of all that, okay, was that the people were eventually released to go their own way, and then years later, okay, eventually they make their way into the promised land. And one of the things with all of that history and context there that God tells the people to do is this: hey, don't forget. And don't forget. Don't forget how I saved you. Don't forget that you were in slavery. Don't forget that you were entirely powerless, but I saved you. I rescued you. And so every year, okay, God's people would get together and they would throw this big party to remember that through the substitution and the blood of a lamb that God saved. And so this feast, okay, Passover, was designed to get people to look back on how God was moving powerfully in history. All right, you got it? Great. Got it? Okay, awesome, great. I need to be reminded periodically. Verse 20, next. When evening came, okay, he was reclining at the table with the 12. Now, I think this is important for where we'll go here in a minute. Now, just try to picture this, okay? When you say we're reclining at the table for dinner, okay, most of y'all go, hey, sit up straight, or don't sit in your chair at all. We would take our chair away from our son if he couldn't sit properly, you know, but these guys are reclining. And so you got to picture a low table to the ground, like 18 inches to 2 feet up off of the ground, if you can picture that. And you would kind of lay on your side and lean on your elbow, and there'd be a lot of food that you would dip into a bowl and that kind of thing. And so, you know, listen, it's the way I used to watch basketball and eat before hard plank floors on my 50th birthday, okay? I would just lay on the living room floor and eat that way. But you got all your favorite people around, you're just kind of chilling together, and you just kind of picture, okay, your best friend just leaning back against you. That's what happens for Jesus. And Jesus is just lounging on another person, and they're just sharing a meal together, you know? And it's also like, okay, hey, everyone's here, you know, the family's all together, You got that one crazy kid from down the street, and we're just having a relaxed meal together, but what happens is Judas, the crazy kid, he's in and out the whole time. And some of the kids start arguing, and there's a moment where Jesus says, hey, just listen up, everybody. This is really important. Verse 26. As they're eating, Jesus took bread, he blessed and broke it and gave it to the disciples, and he said, take and eat it, this is my body. Then he took a cup after giving thanks, he gave it to them and said, drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Now, you just got to try to, okay? This is hard to do, okay? You got to try to just understand how revolutionary and mind-blowing this must have been for the disciples, okay? Jesus is saying, hey, listen, just try to understand for a second what we are doing here in this moment. That from this day forward, this entire meal that you've always known of as Passover is going to take on, I mean, we've been celebrating it for hundreds of years, but from this day forward, it's going to take on an entirely new meaning. And Jesus used the entire Passover meal to point to himself to say, okay, all this right here, it's really about me. It was natural, okay, you would think, because they're sharing this meal that use things that are part of the meal, right? Things that everybody would have. And he chose the most common elements that we would probably be able to go to our kitchen right now and grab. A piece of bread and something to drink, right? He goes, all right, take the bread. It's going to represent my body. Drink the wine, in our case, juice. Sorry, guys, but this is going to represent my blood. And they're probably very confused. I mean, they probably didn't have a clue. They probably really didn't understand what was going on. But, we have this benefit being in our situation right now where we could actually look back into history. Like, we know what was happening. I mean, we have that benefit. We know that Jesus is preparing them for what's about to happen in the next few hours. So we kind of get it, right? When he says, all right, take these things together and remember what I am about to do. They don't know what he's about to do. And what they're going to eventually see is, okay, just as the blood of an innocent lamb signaled God to pass over in the past, okay, what I'm about to do on the cross will do the same thing for you. Okay. In the next few hours, what they're going to see, though, is Judas, okay, is going to betray Jesus, right? One of their very own is going to betray the leader, okay? He's going to forcefully be led away. He's going to be beaten repeatedly. He's going to be put on trial. They're going to run. They're going to scatter. There's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of fear, and they would see Jesus be raised up on a cross. They probably thought it was over. I mean, that's what I would think, wouldn't you? Hey, it was a good run, guys. I mean, we got no jobs, no retirement, nothing. I don't know what you're going to do, but okay, well, it was great. 3 years comes to a close. I mean, that's what I would think. It's probably over, right? When your leader is hanging on a cross, like when your king is literally laying in a tomb, you're not really thinking about God doing the impossible. I mean, the plan of the enemy, let's just go here for a couple of minutes, is that essentially if we can kill the king, then we can kill the kingdom. Right? Let's take out the king and then all this foolishness about this kingdom and heaven coming to earth and all that, then it will all be over. And it sure looked like it happened. Now, I don't know if any of you play chess or not and you even understand the game, but let me give you my interpretation of the most basic point of chess, is that the game is over when the king is trapped. Right? The game is over when the king can no longer move and you declare on your opponent, checkmate. And I want to show you a painting that once hung in the Louvre over in Paris, and you guys can take a look at this one here. And what Frederick Retsch essentially was trying to communicate was a game between the devil and a man, a game of chess between the devil and a man with an angel standing in the background just kind of looking on. And the devil is looking confident and apparently winning, and the man looking defeated and a little bit in despair. And if the devil wins, this is the way he talked about the painting, if the devil wins, he wins the man's soul, and it's titled Checkmate. That's the title of the painting. Because there's no move that he could actually make to win. So a number of sources say that one day, I can't verify this 100%, a number of people say this is what happened, that one day a grandmaster chess champion is in the art gallery, and he's looking at this painting, and he spent so much time just gazing at the chess set and the pieces in the arrangement. He spent so much time just analyzing it that he thought that maybe he noticed something surprising. So he actually asked for them to dig up a chessboard down in the basement. They brought it up to him. He arranged all the pieces as it appears in the painting. And as he was looking at it on the board, he noticed that, in his opinion, it revealed that the devil was not actually, in fact, winning, but that the king had one more move. And can I just tell you that that could become a mantra of sorts for us? Like, as citizens in a kingdom, that when everything seems lost and things look like they're entirely over, that the king still has one more move. I mean, they didn't know what. They didn't know how. It all looked terrible. It's over. And so Jesus is communicating communion. Man, it's just meant to be a reminder that our King Jesus always has one more move. Two things I want you to know about communion today, and that's really the first. Communion's a moment to look back and remember. All right, it is a moment to look back and remember. You know, Jesus' ascent to be king over heaven almost ended on a Friday outside of Jerusalem on a hillside on a cross. And Saturday is silent, and it's out of sight. Hope was lost. There's a lot of despair, some bewilderment, everyone asking, seeking, fearful, and hiding, and even questioning if everything Jesus had said and did was just for nothing. But early Sunday, okay, well, we're going to celebrate here in about 3 weeks. Early Sunday morning, Resurrection Sunday, Easter, God breathed life back into his body, and the king actually came back to life. And so we take communion together, and it can be this place where we remember that we're counting on Jesus to be the one to connect us into a relationship with God. Right, we remember what he's done and the change that it's actually made in our life. We remember by giving thanks, and God has passed over our sins, and we remember that God accepts us because of what Jesus has done for us. So we look back, right, and we're grateful that the King of all kings, right, the one who could carry the weight of our sins, our King's greatest victory was won over death. You know, a few years later, Paul, a follower of Jesus, when he's talking about this very same evening, he's reviewing it with this meal that we're reading about. He's reviewing it with some Christians in a church of Corinth. He says this, "Do this in remembrance of me." He's quoting Jesus. "For as often as you eat the bread and you drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." And if you proclaim the Lord's death, you're proclaiming the Lord's resurrection, okay? The thing that we're doing now, in part through communion, it symbolizes and it represents that they couldn't kill the king. You know, growing up, and, you know, we talk about this from time to time, and I try to be careful because my mom usually sits in here, and it's not a reflection on her. It's just things I picked up, okay? Or my family or my church. It's just things I picked up as a kid. And the tradition for me was to look back to the cross when Jesus died and to think about my sins. Like, communion was all about repentance, okay? And depending on what you did on Saturday, you take longer during communion, okay? And so that's about all I ever remember really learning about communion, okay? It's a chance to remember just how terrible I was and have a moment to plead for mercy for all the things I had done since the last time I took it. As people of Jesus, we should always be looking back to anchor points of faith. But again, okay, and let me try to bridge this. We're living in between. We're living in between when Jesus first came and when Jesus is going to come again. So here's the second thing I want us to know about communion, is that communion is a moment to look forward and anticipate. Okay, to look forward and anticipate. And you see Jesus' very next words that I've passed over so many times. But in the last couple of weeks, they just kind of reached out and they just kind of grabbed a hold of me. And here they are in verse 29. Jesus again, "I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." I mean, I've read that. I've read that so many times. I've stood up here and read that, and I think I missed it. I mean, resurrection, for sure, is the hinge point of all Christianity, okay? It's the entire game. It's the single thing that your faith rests in, like that it happened. I think that's worth remembering because, listen, if the king doesn't raise to life, then he's not the king. If the king doesn't raise to life, the king can't return. But, okay, because King Jesus is alive, you have the hope that Jesus is talking about here of heaven. You have the promise of a life with him, and all that entails. Communion, okay, is going to be this moment to look forward and anticipate. Listen, for the disciples, things are going to get crazy. It's going to look bad. It's actually going to feel like hope is completely lost. And Jesus goes, listen, this is going to be a reminder, really a foreshadowing as well. It's a bit of hope that you can return to again and again and again to be reassured. Okay, listen, guys, remember, he said we're going to do this again together. Like we're going to do this again. Not here, not this way, bigger and better. Where? In heaven. I mean, I don't know how I missed that all these years. That because of what the King has done for you and I, okay, we're going to be able to sit with him, hang out together, I don't know, recline on him, have this word makes me weird, but I don't know what else to say, intimate dinner together, just like this night, that you and I are in this. He's the king, but he's the friend relationship. And listen, I don't know how heaven works, okay? I really don't. But can we imagine, and listen, this is not our normal MO here, but if you feel comfortable, you might even close your eyes for a second and try to imagine this. And I'm going to go for your heartstrings here in the next few minutes. I apologize in no way. Okay, there's going to be this moment likely that I'm going to die. And I don't know how that works. Okay, I really don't. I don't know what I see. I don't know what I'm going to hear. I'm not sure what I'm going to think in that moment. Maybe it's like, okay, here we go. Like, God, I banked my entire life on believing that you're going to meet me in whatever comes next. Okay? Maybe I'm going to take a deep breath, and then the next one is with Jesus. Okay, I'm going to open my eyes. I'm going to see what he looks like for real, not what we've been told or heard or the paintings or anything like that. Like, does he still have a beard? I don't know. What's he wearing? Like, what do his hands look like? I want to see those. You know, of all the actors who have ever portrayed him, who's going to be the closest to how he smiles? I don't know. Want to hear his voice? Like, what's his tone? You know, I've been reading his words in private from stages like this one for years, but like, what's his real cadence? Like, what does he really sound like? How did he mean to say that? How should that have come out? And I know that in that moment, I'm more alive than I've ever been before. So let's just say for a second here, and I don't know if you guys have ever been to this website before called deathclock.com. Put in your age and, you know, are you a smoker or not? What's your BMI? I don't know why that's very personal, but it'll tell you when you're going to die, okay? But I'm going to add a few years to my life, okay? Let's just say I live another 30 years, okay? I'm going to be 85. And certainly, man, it's had some great moments, right? There's a lot of joy. There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of friendship. But man, there's a lot of pain. Physical for sure, emotional, relational. There's a lot of suffering, and this is not to compare. I mean, we got bodies that have betrayed us. We have other people in our life who took life from us. Too many goodbyes, right? Too many funerals. When my last remaining grandparent passed away, our son Jordan was 3. Okay, so he's 31 now. And we explained to him the best we could the language that Grandma had gone to be with Jesus. And we thought, okay, that's going to be the best explanation for him at this age, and that's going to help him the most. And so we go to the funeral home for the viewing, okay? And when Jordan gets to the viewing, he says, I have a question, and the question is, why is Grandma in that box if she went to be with Jesus? Okay. I'm like, okay, he was always that kid, you know. He's just like, it's like, all right, we need to give him a little bit more, okay? So let's add this. Okay, well, because she went to heaven. And so he comes with a follow-up question. Okay, well, can we go there now? You know, you're like, man, I really wish we could. I'd love to get out of this place, wouldn't you? But we can't do that right now. And so, we pull into the graveside service, so you kind of put all this stuff behind you, but you got the questions of an inquisitive 3-year-old. So we're driving down the gravel path, and he can see a lot of people outside who are standing around, and he sees this big tent awning out there, and he says from the back seat, "Is this heaven?" Can I read you one of the short descriptions of heaven in Revelation 21? It says, "I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven, the first earth had passed away. The sea was no more." I don't really understand all that. "I saw the holy city, a new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God." Here's the phrase, "prepared like a bride adorned for her husband." Now listen, it's hard for me to imagine everything brand new like that and how all that takes place, but listen, my wife looked amazing. Yours did too. Your husband, I'm sure he was as handsome as he's ever been, okay? It's been downhill since then, hasn't it? But my wife was amazing. She was beautiful. There was a lot of promise. There's a lot of excitement at our wedding. And even she apparently can't compare to this. The Bible just at times describes the relationship between Jesus and people like you and I are like a bride, and he's a groom, and in heaven there's a party unlike any wedding party that you've ever been to. And I don't know, maybe there's going to be some people that we've known from history, the people that we love today, story after story, laughter, happy tears. But a lot of heaven gets described by what's not there. Because he goes on, "I heard a loud voice saying, 'Look, God's dwelling is with humanity, and we're going to live together.'" Right? We're going to be people together. God himself will be with them. He'll be their God. And he's going to wipe away every tear from our eyes. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, pain will be no more. Why? Because all these things have passed away. Let's go back to me for just a second, and then we'll take communion. Can I tell you, if I get those 85 years, that it will have been 85 years of waiting and striving and pain and hurting and bumping into all of my limitations. So I don't know, okay, in that moment, again, I don't know how any of this works, okay? I don't know if in that moment how many years I just need to be close to Jesus. Listen, maybe it's all solved in an instant. I don't know. But I know I don't have to go through this stuff anymore, and you don't have to go through any of this anymore. And as soon as we get our bearings, okay, I imagine there might be a table set up. Okay, it's going to be a massive party, an enormous celebration. It's going to make some of you Southern Baptists very uncomfortable. But if we read Matthew's record correctly, maybe it's a table low to the ground, okay, big feast. And Jesus is about to keep his promise that he would wait for us. Okay, he wouldn't have this meal again until he had it with us, new in the kingdom of heaven. So maybe, okay, maybe I just get to rest my head up against his shoulder. Maybe he leans against you. He's going to pull out a bottle of wine. It's okay. It's Jesus. And he had been waiting, like he'd been waiting for you to open it. And he pours a glass, and it's the best dinner we've ever had. It's the first of many with our friend and our King, Jesus. Okay? Now, I don't know about you. I will never think about communion the same again. So the way people have observed communion or the Lord's Supper over the years has changed, okay? It's morphed. There's a lot of different methods for how we do this. Sometimes there's arguments in the world. But I grew up in a church that passed it in the gold trays every week, you know. During COVID, we went to the prepackaged stuff that you see in the seat behind you. And, you know, we came up with funny names. It's the kneel and peel, it's the rip and sip, whatever you want to call it. Today, I'm going to ask you to move around the room a little bit, okay? And there's a place down front on each side, and there's a place in the back on each side. And Matt's going to play some music. We're going to worship. And I just want you to have a moment to look back and remember. Okay? And I want you to have that moment to look forward and anticipate. Okay, so when you're ready, here's how it will work. If you're on one of the sides, if you could just kind of go down the wall and grab yours and then come back on the other aisle. If you're in the middle, if you could go to the back and grab yours, and then it's going to be chaos. So, you're not obligated to do this. You don't have to do this, but at the end of that, we're going to give it one last celebration in here together. We're going to wrap this series, and we're going to declare Jesus to be the King of all kings. So, God, today we say thank you for this time. God, thank you for just what we are learning about you as the King and what it means to be a citizen of your kingdom. God, I pray that in these few minutes this morning that we truly can look back and say thank you and celebrate, remember what you have done for us. But God, to even be able to have a moment to reflect in anticipation of what's to come, when, as you say, we're going to celebrate this together in the kingdom of heaven. And we look forward to that today. We thank you for Jesus, and we pray these things in his name. Amen.